Hi everybody, Bearded Rogue here, and I'm recording one of the first videos for BGGCon. Expect to see a couple more of these, maybe just one more. I don't know yet how much there will be, but this is the first one. I tried recording this once before, but that didn't didn't end up recording right, so we're doing it again. But I'm going to go ahead and go through everything. This one's going to be the haul video. That seems to be everybody's favorite thing to see, is the haul videos. I usually get a lot more traffic on them than I do other things. So we'll go over what I played and stuff like that in another video, but this one's just going to be, what did I come home with? So the first thing that I came home with is actually the first thing that I received, and that is this little enamel pin that I got from Beth Sobel, and it is of her design. She didn't manufacture it, but she designed it, and she was passing them out to people. I think they're one of the coolest things ever. I love the little teal heart on this little golden meeple, and I'm so happy to have one. I'm glad that I got to see Beth early on in the convention. She's one of the people that I absolutely love seeing at conventions, and it doesn't happen very often, unfortunately. But BGGCon is one that her and her husband regularly attend, so it was great to see them so early in the convention and be able to pick one of those up. So very, very happy to have that. Next thing that I went and picked up are these. These are metal cubes, and I have them in silver and gold and purple, because of course purple, and a brick red color, and a teal color, and a green color, and a like coppery bronzy type color, and a blue, and a, what's this one? Oh, like a black, almost like a gray, slate gray, and then like a magenta-y purple, pinkish color. There are 10 colors total. Each one of those has 30 in it. These are available on the BGG store. However, I went ahead and picked them up in person because that way I don't have to pay shipping. I love fancier components, whether they're metal or wood or specific shapes or specific, you know, fancy bits, just in general. I love them. And sometimes they inspire designs, sometimes they end up being exactly the perfect thing you need for a design. I don't have any particular thing that I want to do with metal cubes right now, other than just be really happy with them. But I now have 10 colors. I have 30 of each color, and we'll see what comes of it. Either way, I'm really excited to have some. You know, maybe we'll figure out what to do with them a little later. As a designer, you can never have enough bits, especially really pretty bits, and those are some of the prettiest. So, one of the things I will say is that Board Game Geek Con for me this year was practically Card Game Geek Con. I wasn't too current on the latest SN titles, so I didn't walk in with a lot of expectations on what I was going to get or what I was going to play. I just kind of went with the flow and let other people who are much more plugged into the SN releases and the current state of gaming hotness direct my playing. But most of what I came home with were card games. So we're going to go through that. Some of these, for those who don't know, Board Game Geek, part of your admission is that you are given some free games. Usually these are games that either didn't sell well for the publisher or whose license agreement is going to run out soon. And they're looking to offload their remaining stock and various other things like that, donations. I'm not going to go over which games I bought and which games were free. Just know that some of these were games that I paid for, some of them were games that I was just given as part of BGGCon, and we'll leave it at that. So first and foremost is Knox Furred from Quick Simple Fun. Knox Furred is a knife fight in a phone booth. This little game here, and if I can open it, the lid actually has a lot of friction because it's really thick cardboard. The game itself is just a tiny rule book, and then this little tiny deck of cards. As you can see, like it fits in that little well there. But not a lot of cards. But it's basically a tile laying game using cards. There are some neutral cards, and then there are some cards that belong to you. Each player is basically a gang of criminals trying to surround various places and score points at the end of the game. The criminals come in various denominations, 1 through 4, and you can cover over lower denomination criminals. There are also police officers, which I don't think any of them are in here, or in this image here, rather, who, when they're next to criminals, the criminals don't score at all. Your goal is to score the most points possible. But it's very much like a tight, mean little game. Like, you play your criminals around the city trying to score points. Some of the criminals have little gears on them that allow you to move any card in the city. You can also, instead of placing your own criminals, place cards from the neutral area, which will either be places like this that have places that score points, or police officers, which you can use to neutralize other people's scoring opportunities. One thing to keep in mind is that if you put it on the board, other people can use it against you, which is a very interesting dynamic. Either way, it's 55 cards, and it's a very big game for 55 cards. I was really excited about this. I got to play this as one of the earlier games of the con, and it's really good. I like it a lot. So that's Knox Furred. That's the first card game. Second card game, we'll go into Shadowscape from NSKN Games. Shadowscape is basically a dungeon crawl in a box, but it is all card-based. It's like an abstract dungeon crawl. So, like, if I show you here, everything is cards. Like, all of it is cards. And this box is hefty. Like, it's not very big. Like, if I hold it up next to the Knox Furred box, it's just a little bit bigger on in both directions. But it's very, very heavy. It's this one's 220 cards. Plus rules and some tokens, and it's packed full. NSKN Games was actually on the floor. They had a booth and they were showing this one off. Looks pretty neat. I'm looking forward to playing it. It is a 1 to 4 player game, so I'll have to give this one a look-see and see how much I enjoy it. I'm excited to give it a try, though. It looks neat. Unlike a lot of other dungeon crawlers, which are like flip a card, roll dice, and pray, this one has no dice. It seems to be much more deterministic and dependent upon player strategy or player decision than some randomizer mechanism. So, very excited about that one. Next is a game called Twist of Fate. This is like a little micro game inspired by Oliver Twist by Mayday Games, and more importantly, it was designed by Keith Rentz, who is a fantastic designer. This is the first game of Keith's that I own. I've played some of Keith's other prototypes that I really want to own. He has an amazing little gardening game that needs to come out and be published sooner rather than later. But this is a cool little game. I love the box. It's shaped like a book, and it's got a magnetic closure, but it doesn't like hang over, like just the lid closes that way. It's again just a tiny little rule book and a tiny little deck of cards. It is a micro game, and then 4 player colored tokens. But it's just a tiny little package. Micro game. Oliver Twist is a cool setting. 2 to 4 players, 30 minutes. I'm interested. One of the things that is exciting to me about this is that the cards are all basically double-sided. They either they do a couple of things. The effects of them So like this guy is either a +1, -1, or a +2, -2, depending on how you play him. So all of the cards have that kind of a dynamic to them. I've made another game. My Stocko Trucks game actually has like double-ended cards. So it's cool to see that mechanism somewhere else. So I'm interested to give it a try. So that's Twist of Fate. Next is Entropy Worlds Collide. This is from Rule and Make. Rule and Make makes some really cool card games. Skyward is another one of theirs recently that I've acquired that I really, really like. This one is a simultaneous action selection game. And I saw it on Kickstarter, really wanted to back it on Kickstarter, wasn't able to back it on Kickstarter, and was very sad about that fact. So when I saw this at BGGCon, it was very cool to be able to find a copy of a game that I had passed on in previously. I love simultaneous action selection, so it was something that really caught my eye. That and the artwork is gorgeous. Passport Games actually had this in their booth. I think they're the people who are bringing Rule and Make games to North America. Very excited about it and looking forward to playing this one. It says card line 1, so I'm assuming that there will be a card line 2 at some point. And as somebody who loves little card games, I'm very excited to see where that develops. But Entropy Worlds Collide, very excited for that one. Next, let's go over these games. We'll do them separately, but Flee by Friedemann. This is a fast-forward game. Fast-forward games are very similar to his release from last year, Fabled Fruit, in that they have almost a legacy-esque style to them and that the games will evolve over time. But these take it a little further, the fast-forward titles do, in that they don't have a rule book. Like, you start out with just flip a card and start reading and then play from there. The game here was, this is the cooperative one. There are 3 of them: Fear, Fortress, and Flee. I played Fortress all the way through at the convention and had a really good time with that. I played 2/3 of this one at the convention and I did enjoy it. I'm looking forward to playing the last chapter of this guy. It's a 3-chapter story inside of the box, so I'm looking forward to playing the rest of it. It's Alice in Wonderland themed, Mad Hatter, Tweedledum, Alice, and then Lewis Carroll, the author. It's very interesting. The idea behind it is that you pick up the box, open the box, sit down with your friends, pull the deck of cards out, and start playing. And it will teach you how to play the game as you play it. Fortress was that way. It worked really well for me. I enjoyed it. I don't know. I called it a gimmick at one point and kind of got jumped by Stronghold for that. And I don't mean, like, I didn't mean gimmick as in, like, a, like, fake thing that's trying to sell copies of a game. I mean that there's a design conceit that these games have that other games don't. And it is a unique thing to them that could bring people to the table completely separate from the gameplay. And I will say that Fortress and also Flee had this wonderful moment, like in a legacy game, where you flip over a deck of a card from the deck, or you see a new card from the deck, and you're like, oh, so this is a thing now. Like, this is something that I didn't even conceive was going to be here. And there's all these little surprises throughout the games that are really nice, that wouldn't exist were it a read the rule book and play it kind of game. I know for a fact that Fortress can be replayed without being reset. Once you've played through the whole thing, you know how to play, and they give you instructions for how to just play the game indefinitely at that point. I think that the game that exists is pretty interesting and fun, and probably didn't need the fast-forward rules introduction over time rather than a rule book that you read kind of thing. I don't think it needed it to stand on its own, but it's a neat little novel thing. It's almost an event game, like the unbox game, or the unlock games, or the exit games, all the escape room games. Like, it has that kind of an event game type feel. We played through all of Fortress in 2 hours. So it wasn't a really short time period, but it wasn't a really long commitment either. Like, we didn't have to schedule a multi-night campaign like Pandemic Legacy or Seafall or any of those kinds of games. Instead, it was just 2 hours. We burned through it, learned how to play it, saw what it had to offer, and then, we had a game that we could play indefinitely from there on out. I think Flea is going to be similar. Like I said, I haven't finished this one. I'm only 2/3 of the way through it, so I think this one is playable without resetting it completely, but I do not know that for a fact. I have not played Fear at all. I don't know very much about it, so I can't speak on that one, but Fortress was good. Flea so far is good for me. No idea on Fear. So that's kind of that. It's fun. Friedemann continues to be the mad genius, mad scientist of game design. Much like 504 before it, it seems like this was an experiment just to see if he could, and he did. And they're tighter than 504 in my opinion. Like, obviously, because there's only one game in that box instead of 504 games in that box. It was play tested much more than 504 was. And it's interesting. It's a neat little thing. I'm glad I have one. I probably will at some point pick up Fortress. I played the library's copy. And maybe even Fear. I don't know. But I want to finish Flea first. And Fortress I'll pick up when I can. But neat stuff. Next, also Friedemann is finished. This is a solo game in the vein of Friday. Friday is one of my favorite solo games of all time. Maybe my favorite solo game of all time. Onirim on the phone maybe slightly edges it out. I like Onirim in person, but shuffling cards is a thing. Friday is fantastic. Friday is so good that I actually brought it with me to the delivery room while my wife and I were waiting for my son to decide to make his appearance into the world. We played it a couple of times, kind of co-op style. Finished is another solo game. It is not the same solo game as Friday, which is very interesting to me. This one is very puzzly, but not the same kind of like deck buildery type setup. Instead, it has a little bit of a solitaire type aspect to it. Each card has a time on it, and your goal is to try to put all of these times in order over the course of the day. And then all of the cards have abilities at the bottom. Some of them are activated using candy, which has these little candy tokens in here. And you get to go through the deck a certain number of times based on the number of coffee mugs that you have. You can change the difficulty by either having more or fewer coffee, more or fewer candy. But regardless of whether you win or lose, one of the coolest things is that when you're done, this little character up here is on every card. You can actually take the deck, and I don't know if this is going to work, but we'll try it. You can actually take the deck, and you can look at a little... it almost worked. You can look at a little, like, flipbook animation of the character. And when it's in order, it actually looks really, really cool. Like, the animation is fluid. But even if you don't get all of the cards, you can see what you did do with your day. But yeah, it's just a little solo game with these cards, and then the coffee and candy tokens, and then the rule books. It has a very good rule book. It also has a glossary of all of the iconography and examples of how a lot of the cards work. Really well done. Much like Friday, I can tell that I'm going to be playing this one a ton. It's cool to have dedicated solo games, especially some that that are unique in the space, and I'm really glad to have this one in my collection, so that Friday and Sylveon and Onirim and Castellian and all of those can get a bit of a break, because never have enough of those. We're almost done with the card game portion of things. The last card game that I have here is Among the Stars. This is a game that I've played multiple times. I've actually played multiple different copies of this game for my various friends. It's Artipia Games and Stronghold brought it over here to the U.S. It uses these handy-dandy little square cards, and it's a drafting game, much like Seven Wonders, except it's a tile-laying-esque tableau builder. Like, Seven Wonders is also a tableau builder, but in this one, you're actually, like, putting the cards next to each other as different rooms in a space station, and you're building your space station, and you have to make sure that all your rooms are powered, and all of that stuff, and certain rooms score better when they're next to other rooms, and it's a drafting game with some tile laying. Really cool game. I really enjoy it. I'm happy to have my own copy finally. It's been on my wish list forever. Like I said, when I lived in Kentucky, I played multiple different people's copies of this game. Now that I've moved away, I needed my own copy, and now I have one. So, Among the Stars. I'm super excited to play this one again. It's been a while. And eventually maybe I'll pick up the expansion. I think there's only one expansion. I could be wrong. But it's a really good game, regardless. Card drafting, tableau building. Lots of fun. So that's all of the card games that I have, finally. I have 2 additional games left, and we're going to go over those. We're actually going to go over the bigger one first, and that's Favor of the Pharaoh by Tom Lehman, or Lemon. I can't remember how Tom's last name is pronounced exactly. But this is from Bezier Games. It's actually a re-implementation of a game called To Court the King, I think it is, which was a game that had just kind of faded out as I was getting into the hobby. A lot of people recommended it because it's got dice in it, and it's a little bit of an engine buildery type game. The new implementation, a lot of my friends had played it and highly recommended it, said that I would really like it. So now I have a copy. One of the things I do want to highlight, beyond just that it's pretty cool, is that it was one of the few games that I have here that I did not pitch the insert for. So now that I'm traveling not by car but instead by plane, I have to do a lot of extra effort, go through a lot of extra effort to pack everything so that it fits. This game has an amazing insert that holds all the little tiles and the dice and everything really safe and securely. None of that stuff moved, like it was in my carry-on bags, and like once the rules are on top of it, none of it's going anywhere. So I was really both happy that it had such a good insert and kind of bummed because when I was condensing all of my boxes down inside of each other. This is the biggest box of any game that I brought home by far, but I couldn't put other games in it because the insert was too good to get rid of. But yeah, what a problem to have, right? So that's Favor of the Pharaoh. I like little dice buildery engine games, so I'm excited to get this one to the table. And like I said, it's been highly recommended by some of the people that I used to game with in Kentucky, so excited about that. And last but not least is Favelas by Chris Bryan. Chris Bryan, who is really well known for being on the Bored with Life YouTube series. He also happens to be a friend of mine and a designer, and this game proves that he's actually a very good designer. I first played this game at Unpub, and really dug it. Like, the version at Unpub was nearly final. It was already fantastic then. I don't know if anything really was done to tweak it. But it's a tile laying game, and it's a kind of a, I don't want to say vicious tile laying game. It's a really tight tile laying game. So you have, each player has one of these boards. You are decorating the Favelas in Rio de Janeiro, and you're trying to have the majority of various colors. The game has dice. You do roll them, but only 3 times in the game. And basically, these are how much the different colors are worth if you have the majority. So if I have the majority in red right now, or yeah, red, based on what's facing you, I would get 2 points. So you can see this one has 2 red tiles on it. But you're comparing against everybody else. Only the majority scores. There's also a clear die in there that scores if you have at least one of each color on your board, but you can't build outside of this space. You instead stack on top of it, and all of the tiles, every single one, is a double tile. So if you count up how many spaces there are and how many spaces are covered by the tile, you can see there's an odd number. You cannot stack these evenly on any row. So you immediately have to start making decisions as to which colors are you going after, which colors are other people going after. Are there any that you could kind of sneak in a victory on with just having 2 of a color instead of having to go heavier into a color? It gives you all sorts of little interesting decisions in a very tight, confined space. Like I said, it was really, really good at Unpub, and a lot of people wanted to walk out with a copy then. Unfortunately, it wasn't for sale yet. It was still a prototype. BGGCon is the first place that I was able to get it. It was out at Essen, but BGGCon, it was available for sale. And one of the things I want to highlight is I didn't get rid of this insert either, because it actually ends up being really good. It looks like it would be horrible. It's one of those, you know, there's this big well in the middle and these big pieces of cardboard on the outsides. But actually, this one works really well for the game. All the tiles will fit just fine in the middle. The player boards can fit on top, and then this big central board where the dice go fits on top of that, with the rules on top of that. Like, everything fits in here. Nothing moves. So my 2 largest games that I had, I didn't get rid of the inserts, which was shocking to me. Now, inside of this one, there was enough space to put some of my smaller card games, like Knox Furred, fit in here and stuff like that. But it's got an insert that doesn't look like it should work, but actually does. The game design is brilliant and really fun. The production is really high. I am super happy with this one. And I'm even more happy because this didn't make it at the beginning of the show. They told us that it would be there later in the day. I just happened to be walking by visiting a friend and saw it sitting there, and so I picked up a copy and then promptly found Chris to show him that I had his game and he didn't. At which point I had to babysit their game of Clans of Caledonia until everybody at the table went up and got a copy for themselves. This is a great game, guys. I highly recommend it. I played it twice after purchasing it at the con and taught it to multiple people. It's a really easy teach. It's a really easy play with a lot of like hard decisions. So like the rules aren't complicated. You'll get those down really quickly. Then you'll realize how much you messed up inside of those rules. Not because you didn't understand what you were doing, but because the implications of what you were doing only really become clear as you play the game and pay attention to what everybody else is doing. Fantastic design. Really excited to have this one. And that's it, guys. That's my haul. So, Card Game Geek Con, with the exception of Favor the Pharaoh, which is a dice game, and Favelas, which is a tile-laying game. It was a lot of fun. I was really happy with this Board Game Geek Con, and really happy with this haul. With PAX Unplugged overlapping, I was worried that there weren't going to be a lot of vendors there selling things, but as you can see, there were plenty of vendors there, and plenty of good things to come home with. Yeah, that's it, guys. If you have any questions about any of the other games and anything, feel free to just, say something in the doobly-doo and let me know. Otherwise, that's it. Later, y'all.